Before anything else, I already made the first episode review, so definitely go check that out if you haven't already. This is more of my overall take on the show as a whole. Going into it, Welcome to Derry, my expectations were honestly really high. I absolutely adored the first Dead. It's one of those horror movies that to me just nails the tone, the characters, and the fear perfectly. And even though I really didn't like It Chapter 2, I still had faith. I figured the TV format would allow the story to breathe more, explore Derry more, and maybe recapture what made the first film so special. Because of that, I went in hopeful, excited, and ready to love this. Before I go any further though, I want to be clear, this is a spoiler-free review. My overall feeling after finishing Welcome to Derry is disappointment, not anger, not hatred, just that frustrating kind of disappointment where you can see how good something could have been. There's genuinely a lot of incredible stuff here, especially toward the ending, but the show is weighted down by so many flaws that it never fully comes together. It constantly feels like it's right on the edge of being great, and then immediately trips over itself. The best part of this show without question is Pennywise. Everything they did with him worked for me. What I really liked is how it feels like episode by episode he's slowly sliding closer to his true form. There's a sense of progression to how he's portrayed that I found really effective. Instead of just throwing him in constantly, the show builds him up in a way that feels deliberate. And some of the choices made with Pennywise near the end are genuinely awesome. Without spoiling anything, the ending raises some really interesting questions about what this story actually is. It makes you wonder whether this is a prequel, a sequel, or something more complicated than either, and that ambiguity is one of the most exciting things that the show does. Visually, the show can look incredible. The cinematography is often really strong, with great lighting, strong framing, and a heavy atmosphere that actually feels like Derry. When the show is at its best, it generally feels eerie and unsettling in a way that fits perfectly with the It universe. Along with that, some of the nightmare sequences involving Pennywise are really effective. These scenes tap into psychological horror more than cheap jumpscares, and for a brief moment, they reminded me of why Pennywise is such an iconic horror character in the first place. But then we get to the problems, and unfortunately there are a lot of them. The CGI is generally awful, and I do not say that lightly. It's not just a little rough or noticeable sometimes, it's flat out horrendous. There were moments where it completely took me out of the show, and I'm not exaggerating when I say I almost stopped watching because of it. For a series this high profile and this expensive, there's really no excuse for how bad some of these effects look. The military subplot is another big issue for me. I never liked this aspect of the It mythos, and this show didn't change my opinion at all. Even though it technically connects to some larger ideas, it's just not interesting. It drags, it eats up screen time, and it never feels nearly as compelling as the horror element. Every time the story shifts focus to it, the show loses momentum. The characters are another major letdown. I just still like them, especially the main ones. They're not particularly engaging, and it makes it hard to care about what happens to them. On top of that, the acting is very inconsistent. There are a few decent moments here and there, but a lot of the performances feel flat, and sometimes they're just straight up bad. When the emotional core of a show doesn't work, the horror doesn't hit nearly as hard. Structurally, this show also doesn't justify being stretched out the way it is. It really should have been a miniseries. Instead, it feels padded, like it constantly trying to fill time rather than tell the tightest version of its story. As a TV show, it just isn't that engaging, and there were episodes where it felt like very little actually happened. By the time it was over, I wasn't angry, I was just disappointed. There's real potential here. There are flashes of something great, especially whenever Pennywise is involved, but the flaws are impossible to ignore. It's not the worst thing ever, and it's not a total disaster, but it never lives up to what it could have been. In the end, It Welcome to Derry lands right in the middle for me. It's not a complete failure, and it's definitely not the worst thing ever made, but it never comes close to reaching the heights it should have. There are moments, especially whenever Pennywise is on screen, where you can see real passion, creativity, and ambition, and those moments genuinely work. Unfortunately, they're surrounded by weak CGI, uninteresting subplots, inconsistent acting, and pacing issues that drag the whole experience down. What makes it frustrating is that the potential is right there, constantly teasing something great that never fully arrives. Because of that, I cannot call it good, but I also cannot call it bad. It's just stuck in that awkward middle ground. For me, that puts It Welcome to Derry at a 6 out of 10. And with all that said, I really want to hear what you thought about it. Welcome to Derry. Did it work for you? Did you enjoy the slower burn and the direction they took Pennywise? Or are you as disappointed as I was? I'm generally curious if this show clicked more for other people, because I can see why some might love it even if it didn't fully land for me. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to talk about it with you all. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.